Warpugs. So, today we have a request from Fallen Honor. This is done by PancreasNoWork. It is Trazyn the Infinite. It's not grave robbery if it's archaeology, which is true until you consider all the kidnapping, sabotage, grand larceny. Basically, Trazyn the Infinite is the... he's the spirit animal of the Blood Ravens, okay? Just straight out. So, Trazyn the Infinite goes in and clocks in as one of the biggest dicks in 40k. And if you didn't know that, Trazyn is a dick among dicks. He is like ultimate dickishness. He has no concept of property. The amount of people that he has kidnapped is utterly insane. And we already know he has... oh god, what does he have? He has a clone of a Primarch, several Custodes, an entire regiment of Imperial Guard, well, probably several regiments at this point. He has an entire council from a craft world. He has, oh my god, he used to have a high fleet, but it kept on breaking out. Let's see what PancreasNoWork has to say about him. And we all know that he has Zaka Creed.
Human alive who doesn't like history to some extent.
Some
you might
extent.
say, you know, plenty of examples of people who don't like history, but I guarantee you they've had at some point an interest in a movie or book that was...
yeah, even the people that say they absolutely have no interest in history know who Cleopatra was, or, you know, what Rome was, or, you know, think Gladiator was a cool movie.
some way historical. Maybe someone swears up and down that they hate history books and documentaries and whatnot, and then they turn around and say their favorite movie is Saving Private Ryan. That seems pretty historical to me. But then again, I'm biased. I majored in history to teach it, as silly as that is looking back on it. Of course I'm going to say people like history. But I know someone who agrees with me. Trazyn the Infinite.
Yep.
Necron nobility, genius, and all-around cool dude, both by the standards of Warhammer 40k and in general, believe it or not. You probably all know the basics of him, I'm sure. That is to say, you all probably know what he's famous for, stealing everyone's stuff like his life depended on it. But believe it or not, there's more to a character than the most noteworthy and fan-recognized trait. As it turns out, Trazyn actually has a lot going on for him underneath the hood. He's clever, as all thieves should be, has quite the sense of humor, and even has something that begins to approach kindness and empathy in his own messed up way. And since yours truly has finally done the unthinkable and read another 40k book, that of course being the Infinite and the Divine, I'd quite like to make a video about the fella. Let's see what he's all about, from his many archaeological treasures to the things about him that don't involve blatant thievery.
I welcome all to a place in my carefully curated collection.
Yeah.
But since I'm talking about a Necron character, I think it's fitting I talk about the sponsor of today's video, Manta Sleep.
Oh.
They've slept for 65 million years. They know bed rest is important. Manta Sleep's job is a very simple, very important one, making sleep better. Because if you sleep well, your life is gonna be better. You'll be healthier, happier, and all sorts of other positive adjectives. To help with this, they make sleep masks and sleep aids, and as someone whose sleeping habits range from college student on finals week to eldritch gods slumbering for thousands of years straight, I will tell you
That's this guy. That's this guy.
straight up that I greatly appreciate their sleep masks. And these masks aren't made on the cheap. There's some quality stuff. You ever hear of a little something called silk, one of the softest, most luxurious feeling things on the planet? Yeah, they got a mask made out of it. You can even get it in purple, so you get to feel like royalty and wear the color of royalty. Sleep like the Roman emperor you are. You deserve it. But that's hardly the only thing you can get from Manta Sleep. Want a weighted mask? Boom, there it is. That's the one I use, and it is a very nice thing to have.
That way her eyebrows can do push-ups in their sleep.
Or maybe you want to listen to something while you fall asleep, be it an audiobook, some music, YouTube videos. Well, Manta's once again got you covered because they've got a sleeping mask with a built-in Bluetooth system. I enjoy listening to stuff like that while I'm falling asleep, but headphones can be uncomfortable. Well, with Manta, you can fix both of those problems at the same time. All of them are freely adjustable too, so there's no need to lose sleep worrying about it not fitting. And even if sleeping masks aren't your style...
That was bad. That was really bad. I cannot give you points for that. I can give no points to you for that.
Manta Sleep's the got some goodies for you. They've got earplugs, they've got a travel pillow, they've a nap arc for when your manager isn't paying attention to you at work. Everything you could possibly need to improve your sleeping experience, Manta has just for you. And you know what else Manta Sleep has for you? Deals. Using the link in the description and my code, which is helpfully also on screen right now, you can get 10% off your order. That's https://bit.ly/45vy9wl using code Pancreas for 10% off your order.
Hey,
Make sure you're resting your best with Manta Sleep.
Yes. Get some rest. Lots of rest. I think we all need it.
Now, let's talk about the funny stealing robot.
Let's go.
Spoilers for the Infinite and the Divine going forward. I'm not going to spoil every single plot point of the book, but I'm going to be mentioning it somewhat frequently as a point of reference, so don't jump up my ass because I spoiled the book for you. It's been out for years by this point. Go read the damn thing.
Right.
It's good, I promise. I know it's scary for some of you reading Warhammer books that don't have a Primarch on the cover of them, but...
Or Space Marines.
Trust me, it's worth the read.
Or Caiaphas Cain.
Trazyn the Infinite's backstory is that of literally every other Necron character to exist. He used to be a Necron tier, the Catan decided the entire species needed to lose the tier part of Necron tier, and then became a mummy Terminator. In his case, there's some evidence that Trazyn dragged Orikan to the Diviner into biotransference himself, which would hint that Trazyn was either a fanatical devotee of the Catan or just a massive douchebag. Of course,
I lean towards the latter.
Of course, Orikan's memories were probably messed with by the Deceiver, so it's also equally likely that Trazyn had nothing to do with it. During his time as a Necron tier, he was the chief archivist of the Necron tier, whose job was to oversee the mummification of Necron nobility. A rather high-status job, if I say so myself. He was also already the historian we know him as today, although with not quite as large a gallery as he would come to have. Since Necron lore goes in the direction it does, it's safe to assume that he fought in the War in Heaven against the Old Ones, Eldar, Krork, and all those colorful background lore blurs that GW will never flesh out. Then he goes to take a nap and is set to wake up 65 million years in the future. Although for Trazyn, his sleep wasn't to last quite as long as that. He only slept for 64,990,000 years, waking up 10,000 years before most of the other Necrons. And since even after all this time he was still the Archivist, he set about doing what he does best, which is to say robbing all sorts of peoples of their belongings.
He was the Blood Ravens Primarch before there was a Blood Ravens Primarch. And yes, okay, so let's knock it out. All these things are true. 16th Legion helmet, there's a Zenithrope, Hive Tyrant. I don't quite know what that is at the back there. Thunder Warrior. There's a couple of Sisters of Silence. Oh, look, yeah, and there's the Wraith Guard. Okay.
Minor Xeno species we don't know anything about, humans, other Necrons, anything you can think of. Trazyn probably has something from its civilization in his planet-sized museum of solemnness. To his credit, not all of these are from civilizations that are still around. There's plenty of planets from still existing empires such as the Imperium that are long gone from memory in all ways except for as an exhibit from Trazyn's archives. Call it grave robbing if you really want to, but I'm willing to give Trazyn the benefit of the doubt on this. These civilizations would have come and gone to the ignorance of everyone around them for all time had he not taken something from them. For a good amount of his acquisitions, I'm willing to say he's doing proper archaeology, not just grave robbing. That being said, a good amount of the time he is just grave robbing. Or
and
stealing and kidnapping, because when you want to get the most accurate depiction of a time period, you have to do some dirty work. And thus, we get to what he was doing when he woke up during the Horus Heresy and the immediate aftermath of it. Stealing Imperials. He has replicas of several of the major battles of the Horus Heresy. Having woken up before just about every other major Necron, he had the chance to witness it go off in a way no one else quite did. An outside observer to mankind collectively shitting itself thanks to Horus's little temper tantrum, he knew a chance to get some good historical dioramas when he saw it. So he started collecting Space Marines.
Yep.
A lot of Space Marines.
Yep.
Enough that they'll become relevant later on.
Yes.
He collected more than just that, of course, like Custodians and Thunder Warriors. Also, something I find absolutely amazing is that Trazyn said he found the Imperium to be rather boring. It was all Emperor this, Emperor that. Great scene. Maybe this isn't the best way to word it, but it felt like someone at GW actually understood that perhaps the Imperium isn't the only thing about the setting worth giving a damn about. Of course, immediately after this, Trazyn thinks to himself about how the Horus Heresy was just amazing and full of drama and the coolest thing ever, so it wasn't the perfect scene. But at least GW managed to hold themselves back from stroking themselves off to completion.
Right.
Or it was just too late to remove the line and they shot the guy who called the Imperium boring in an official 40k book. Could be either, really. Oh, and he also claims that he knew Guilliman and was friends with him. He told Cato Sicarius this to his face. Now, this is Trazyn. He could be lying, or he could be stretching the truth. Or he could be telling the complete truth to a space marine who would naturally assume he's full of it. Until him and G-Man interact in modern 40k, we probably won't ever know. Probably after Trazyn realizes an awake demigod is a lot more interesting an exhibit than a sleeping one, and goes to acquire more museum pieces, as it were. But one of the most interesting things he tried to find was this artifact called the Astrarium Mysterios. What exactly it is I won't say, so you can find it out in the Infinite and the Divine for yourself, but he raids an Eldar Maiden world to get at it. The Exodites naturally do not approve of this, but the Exodites exist to lose so other factions can do cool stuff.
Yeah, I would really like to see some books where the Exodites do anything other than get clapped.
And that's pretty much what happens. They at least managed to take out a decent portion of the force he brought with him, so they didn't just get wiped en masse like with Eldritch Omens. Or maybe I'm just not as bitter this time because it was another Xeno faction wiping the Exodites out rather than Chaos or the Imperium. This plays into the long-standing feud he has with Orikan, who also very much wanted the Astrarium. This wasn't the cause of it though. They've been arguing since before they were metal men, and now that they are, all it means is that when they get angry, they can dent the floorboards around them by accident when they go at it. Trazyn didn't quite grasp the full extent of what the Astrarium was after Orikan stole it, at least not initially. Even throughout the first few chapters of The Infinite and the Divine, as he learns more about it, he assumed he was dealing with a replica of the real thing, though given how rabidly Orikan pursued it, he caught on pretty quickly it was the real deal. What follows is essentially an entire book about an old married couple bickering back and forth amongst each other, only the married couple is a pair of Necron lords who could each level a star system in their own unique ways. Without too much spoiling, this book shows just how damn clever Trazyn is. Orikan, for those who don't know, is a master time traveler, and this is relevant for two examples of Trazyn's brilliance. For one, upon learning that Orikan was time traveling, he immediately took steps to counteract the problem. He listened to one of his underlings' advice on how to counteract the issue, and proceeded to take care of things in a way that was most fitting for Trazyn. Which is to say, he stole from the horde of another dynasty whose members were still entirely asleep. Hey, I said sometimes he's...
This is going to become a recurring theme, guys. If you don't know about Trazyn, his usual method of dealing with something is stealing. Flat out.
It's not just robbing people. Memes are born for a reason, and in Trazyn's case, the meme about him being a dirty thief is a lot more representative of himself as a character than the Krieg shovel meme. But the other way that Trazyn shows his brilliance is that even before he was able to counteract Orikan directly, he kept outwitting him even as he traveled back in time. The incident where all this happens was when Trazyn and Orikan were put on trial by a Necron council. They were a sort of interim government that existed before the Necrons would fully awake 10,000 years from then, designed to keep the peace between those who had awoken early for one reason or another, and generally make sure the Necrons weren't all killing each other for stupid blood feud reasons. Necrons being perhaps the most infighting-prone faction in 40k short of the Orcs and Chaos, this council is not without merit. Orikan was trying to frame Trazyn as being the one completely at fault, and despite being able to not only completely redo the conversation, but also go back far enough to have a different Necron noble oversee proceedings each time, he couldn't get Trazyn to take the blame. In case the meaning of that went over your head, let me rephrase it just a bit. Despite having the power of infinite do-overs and the ability to basically pick whoever he wanted to be his judge, Orikan could not outwit Trazyn here. So yeah, he's a smart guy, both in his ability to admit when he isn't up to snuff yet, and in just general cleverness. After that, the book follows Trazyn and Orikan as they attempt to outwit each other and claim the Astrarium and the secrets it leads to which I will spoil little of. We do get to see Trazyn frequently pull off the slyest trick up his sleeve, however, which is his body hopping ability. Trazyn can very conveniently decide that a given Necron is actually himself, taking over them and turning them into a new body for himself. He can do it to all sorts of different Necron types as well.
He had to do this several times against the Salamanders because they kept on turning him into scrap metal.
Off the top of my head, I don't believe he ever did it to a basic Necron warrior, but that could very well just be because he didn't want to stoop that low. He's still a Necron Lord, after all, the pinnacle of arrogance in this setting short of Prince Uriel. His mastery of the living metal that makes Necrons up also lets him smile and wink, funnily enough. Not really important, just a cool character trait he has. Undoubtedly lets him be the perfect little goblin whenever he wants to be one. For all the interesting stuff about the guy, though, he isn't exactly the most plot-relevant character for a large portion of 40k history. He wasn't intervening in the War of the Beast like with Eldrad, for instance. He did fuck around with Cato Sicarius a bit, and he did threaten Orikan with the Catan Shard, which understandably scared the hell out of him, but he wasn't a driving force or a major player in many narrative events for about 10,000 years. He was still busy, of course. His galleries only ever grew throughout all this time. He just wasn't making a point of involving himself in the biggest of battles for the fate of the universe and whatnot. Galaxy's a dangerous place after all, and if he dies, he's dead being a Necron. No soul to resurrect or possibly achieve demon princehood. That's why when he does go out, he's such a big fan of the body takeover trick of his.
True.
Even if you managed to kill him, you really didn't. There's also just plain and simple no way to corner down the real Trazyn, as it were, because he's got such mastery over living metal that he warps the Necron body he inhabits to become like his. He still looks like Trazyn no matter what body he takes over, as long as he has a couple of minutes to reforge it to his liking. He also did try and take the Spear of Vulcan from the Salamanders,
which ended hilariously
once, but it failed when he was given its spearhead first. It didn't kill him, of course, but he decided it wasn't worth pissing off the Salamanders anytime soon.
He tried it twice, and both times he got his ass clapped.
Wait a couple of thousand years for them to all die out first, maybe. He's got the time to spare.
True.
He did make friends with one Inquisitor Valeria, however, becoming pen pals with her. Isn't that nice? It started when she briefly had to stay in his galleries, not as an exhibit, but as a visitor. She sent an invading army of a bunch of Catacan units, and he responded by sending her a letter thanking her for sending so many of them that he not only had enough to fill up an exhibit about a war they once took part in, but replaced some of the lesser specimens with the troops she sent. He thanked her for such generosity as to send so many regiments worth of museum display, and even gave her a gift alongside the letter, a Tesseract labyrinth. She was trapped inside, but he assured her it was a novelty to people like him and herself, assuming she was smart enough to get out. She was, and they had about the closest thing an Inquisitor can get to having a friendship with a foul Xeno. She's later executed for the crime of consorting with foul Xenos, unless I'm misremembering what I read, but hey, it was probably cool while it lasted. You can't really blame Trazyn for that one either, that's just the Imperium being the Imperium.
True.
But come the 41st millennium's end, or the beginning of the 42nd, because the actual proper date in 40k doesn't mean anything, Trazyn decided he was going to get involved. No longer on the sidelines, this man. He was instead going to mostly still remain on the sidelines, but this time start throwing things from his collection at the things that were bothering him.
True.
Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade was getting revved up to go, and believe it or not, Trazyn was one of the first people to realize something big was about to happen. Not because of a spy network of connections to important people in the Imperium, or
because of a massive fuck-off bell started ringing like no tomorrow inside his labyrinth and broke a whole bunch of exhibits.
anything like that, but because he stole a sacred bell belonging to an Imperial saint and it started ringing out in stasis. 13 times to be precise, and Trazyn figured that with the holy bell breaking the rules of stasis, it was either a case of chaos about to do something big or the 40k galaxy was about to have one hell of a rat problem. So he set off to the Celestial Orrery, that thing that can destroy stars with a click of a button. It can also help see the future to some extent, so after a quick chat with the Necrons there, who weren't terribly happy to see him on account of him having stolen their ship before, he's off to Cadia. But wait, I skipped something. He also tossed the sacred bell into the webway.
True.
Did he do this as part 1
He did this to be dicks to the Eldar.
of some grand scheme to battle chaos or even alert the Imperium to what was coming? No. He just hoped it would be as annoying for the Eldar as it was for him. In any other scenario, I'd complain the GW is once again screwing the Eldar over for no reason, but that's just funny. Reminds me of Left 4 Dead when you see a car that says, "Do not shoot this, it'll alert the Horde," and then I immediately shot it. Yeah, I was that asshole. Anyways, Cadia. He goes there, and Belisarius Call is busy trying to figure out the Necron pylon system that's located on the planet. Call is racist, then Trazyn gives him some tips, and then he just starts letting loose with random shit in his collection. If you think that feels oddly generous in action for a chronic hoarder, consider that Trazyn both perhaps wanted to play the hero for once, and the fall of Cadia was a great chance to collect all sorts of different pieces to replace him. One of those things he released was a company of Horus Heresy-era Ultramarines.
Yep.
Remember I said he collected enough of them that it'd become relevant?
And the book isn't necessarily clear on if we're talking a Great Crusade company or a Codex Astartes company. It was never really clear on that. And that is a massive distinction to make.
Well, here's the relevancy. Give some credence to Trazyn actually knowing Guilliman. Granted, I doubt they're really the best of friends if Trazyn stole some of his kids, but if nothing else, there's actual solid evidence he's at least aware of Trazyn. Of course, we know how Cadia goes. Necron pylons are activated, thank you Trazyn. The day is almost won and the Eye of Terror shut, and then Abaddon throws a hissy fit followed by more literally throwing a Blackstone fortress into the planet.
Right.
Rip. Trazyn promptly leaves after kidnapping Creed for his gallery, and then starts probing his pet Catan shard for questions. Questions about how to safely enter the Eye of Terror and Great Rift. One gets the feeling he's attempting to steal the mother of all museum exhibits for himself. Although for all I know, he could just be planning to raid Crone Worlds for soul stones like the Eldar do so he can barter with them for more stuff.
He's gonna find Slaanesh's subscription to baddragon.com. That's what I think.
Never really know with Trazyn. His overarching goal of find more historical artifacts may be clear, but the devil's in the details, you know? Now with the basics of his lore largely out of the way, I want to talk about what he's like. Obviously, he's a bit of a kleptomaniac, but in many ways, he's actually quite the kind and introspective fellow. This, of course, comes with the qualifier that he's an asshole and has done pretty horrid stuff, but this is 40k. That's everyone. So, putting that aside, let's talk about how he's not too bad. For one, his interactions with Inquisitor Valeria. Trapping someone in a prison cube may not sound like the kindest thing, but keep in mind that she started at first by having an army invade his house.
True.
And if there's anyone who'd be able to reliably escape something like that in the Imperium, it'd be a member of the Ordo Xenos. Aside from that, him bothering to show up at Cadia at all shows he's willing to make nice with others. He worked with Call and released who knows how much of his collection onto the battlefield to try and make sure the Imperium won the day. Even taking Creed wasn't that bad, all things considered. Yeah, it's a bit fucked up, but Creed's other option was to die on Cadia and have his soul torn apart by demons. Compared to that, Trazyn's museum is a kindness. And in fact, there's some evidence that the people in Trazyn's museum aren't aware of time passing, so it's not like they're just being tortured for all eternity. The Hammer and Bolter short about him and Solemness shows that the Dark Eldar and Chaos Marines inside the little dimensional pocket he trapped them in aren't aware of loops. With that in mind, I don't think it's a stretch to say other people in his exhibits are aware they're even frozen in time. That's not to say he's never done something like that. He has a Deathwatch team and a band of orcs positioned right across from each other that are fully aware of the other's presence. If he wants to, he can make sure you're fully aware of the passage of time, full on I have no mouth and I must scream style. But I don't think there's reason to believe that's the case with everyone in his museum. He's also a genuine historian. He doesn't just collect stuff to have it, he is serious about preserving and cataloging galactic history. He gets angry when his displays are ruined, not just because it's his stuff being destroyed, but because history itself is being erased. That's
quote-unquote his stuff.
That's why when Orikan steals the Astrarium for him, he was enraged. Orikan destroyed multiple exhibits of his in an effort to throw Trazyn off during their fight, some of which were Necron-tier artifacts. He was genuinely distraught over them being destroyed, and it extends beyond being angry when his stuff is smashed. A passage in The Infinite and the Divine is Trazyn trying to give a tour to some humans on Solemness. Now, given that he also told them to stop screaming so he could continue, they probably weren't there willingly, but he at least wants to teach people some stuff. Very relatable to me, even though I didn't stick with teaching as a profession. He also doesn't like needless violence. Infinite and the Divine largely revolves around the planet of Serenade, where a Necron tomb lies with all sorts of secret knowledge inside. When Orikan showed up with Necron destroyers, Trazyn was upset at the damage it was doing to the planet's ecosystem and the people on it. It goes from Eldar, Maiden World to Imperial Colony throughout the course of the book, and Trazyn never once wanted to destroy anything on it to get what he wanted. Well, except from Orikan, he wanted to destroy Orikan, but nothing native to the planet is what I meant. Even if you view it as cynically as possible and view his wanting to limit collateral damage as him just wanting to preserve history so he can steal it later, that's still far more than most characters in this setting would do. He's also introspective in a very depressing way. He's fully aware that when the Necron-tier became Necrons, they lost something, the soul. And he laments that no longer can the Necrons do things like truly appreciate music or create new art. That's part of why he's so dedicated to preserving history. It's both out of a genuine desire to preserve what's come and gone, as well as his way of coping with what's been lost. Speaking of his
which is kind of sad, to be honest with you.
History museum, I was originally going to cap the video off with a list of stuff Trazyn stole for his exhibits, but to be honest, I think that'd just be a waste of time. If you really want to know, it's not hard to look it up. Just use the Warhammer Wiki or 1d4chan for the highlights. I'll tell you my personal favorite thing in there, though. A Tyranid swarm of quite humorous extent. You want to know what he did with it? Unleashed on the Phalanx to disable it. Sure, this is non-canon and only happens in Battlefleet Gothic's 2 Necron campaign, but I just love the mental imagery of that. What the hell constitutes a Tyranid swarm of quite humorous extent? That's an exact quote, by the way.
Yes,
is it an entire hive fleet? Because he captured one of those once, it's not out of the question. Alternatively, is it just like 5 of them and he was forcing the Phalanx to play Alien Isolation in real life? Whatever the case, it worked and it was funny. Let's see if he's any good on Tabletop. For lore positives, Trazyn gives you the chance to fight for something a bit different by 40k standards. Usually it's for the glory of the Emperor / the Dark Gods, or for survival, or for any number of grand reasons.
In the Dark Eldar's case, hookers.
Trazyn, meanwhile, just wants to burglarize your house. Perhaps not the grandest motivation by comparison, but history is important, and it's a breath of fresh air as far as I'm concerned. He's also one of the more morally good Necron characters, so if that means anything to you, then he's a good choice to field as well. He's also just a silly little guy, so if you want to imagine your army laughing at the enemies all day long, make sure to grab him. Sure, the average Necron warrior won't be laughing, but the leadership will be. For Tabletop positives, he's actually surprisingly solid in melee for a historian. His Empathic Obliterator deals D3 wounds, and with a 2+ to hit and AP -1, he's at the very least going to be causing some damage. But if you kill a character with it, all enemy units within 6 inches of him take D3 mortal wounds. If you're fighting against a horde army and the enemy messes up their positioning, Trazyn's going to make him regret it. He's also pretty tanky, with a 3-up save, 4-up invulnerable save, and 6 wounds. Not the tankiest in the game by any means, but it'll at least ensure that it'll take some concentrated firepower to bring him down. Of course, as you might have guessed from his lore, he can also take over bodies. When he's killed, you roll a dice. On a 2 or higher, you replace an existing character with Trazyn, who comes back with 3 wounds remaining. No rules that happen when a model is destroyed are triggered either. This is not only funny, but can ensure you get a bit more use out of another character who's also on death's door, since Trazyn always comes back with 3 wounds. He also reduces damage by 1 if he's your warlord. Not amazing, but helpful. Aside from that, he makes it a little bit cheaper to use the Dynastic Heirloom stratagem, and buffs the movement of nearby Necron core units by a little bit. For lore downsides of fielding Trazyn, in some ways his differing attitudes from 40k characters can be a bit disappointing. For instance, most every Space Marine is going to go down fighting, whereas Trazyn is going to leg it if things aren't looking too hot. I think it's a
Trazyn's going to deuce out the second things start looking bad, okay? Trazyn really isn't going to stick around for that long. He did against the Salamanders. He found it rather amusing, actually, when he switched bodies after they turned him into... Basically, the Salamanders recycled Trazyn. But when he woke up, he did find it amusing.
Positive, but if you want the classic 40k go down fighting attitude, you won't get it with him. Really, if you don't like clever characters, you won't like Trazyn. Maybe clever isn't the best word for it. Devious? Goofy? Tricksters. I think that's a good word. Trazyn's a trickster. He releases Tyranid swords.
How about just dick?
On people as a prank, would happily bombard you from orbit rather than face you in proper 1v1 combat if he has no reason to, and generally isn't going to play fair if he can help it. If you want that kind of character, the Necrons do have others that fit that mold, but Trazyn certainly doesn't. Not much else to say for lore downsides. It's the history bias, what can I say? I'm not going to look down on a fellow connoisseur of the historical arts. Wow, that made me sound like a pretentious fuckwad. Anyway, time for rules downsides. First off, Trazyn has no ranged weapon, so he's got to get up to the enemy line to really do anything. He's survivable enough to probably make it past the first round of combat, but since he's a Necron, he's therefore slow, meaning he isn't going to be reaching melee terribly quickly. Right. He also definitely shouldn't be fighting stronger characters. Throw him against the standard Commissar, and the guardsmen around him are going to be taking some auto wounds. Throw him against Guilliman, and you're going to watch the 90 points you spent on Trazyn evaporate in front of your eyes. Best be careful with him, otherwise who's going to collect all those museum pieces? He also doesn't do all that much for the army he's in, unfortunately, and really that's all I've got to say on his
He does add that little bit of trolling capability.
Rules. It's a shame a character as fun as Trazyn is so simple on the tabletop. Throw him at lesser characters so he can get some free wounds on whatever unit they're attached to, and aside from that, keep him away from the enemy's big guns and he'll probably make his points back. For one final, non-rules related downside, his model is in resin. GW resin, which means it probably sucks and you'll accidentally clip half the model off trying to remove it from the sprue. And there's Trazyn the Infinite. I really like the guy. He's got some deep introspective moments and motivations, as well as the surface-level funny meme stuff. The perfect kind of character, in my opinion. When a character is all deep, tragic thought about the setting and just general grimdark angst, they're boring. When they're just surface-level meme fodder, they're annoying. Trazyn has both, and as a consequence is one of the most well-rounded characters in the setting. Certainly more interesting than a good chunk of the Primarchs. Yes. Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You are the unguarded valuables cabinet to my Trazyn the Infinite, giving me what I need to keep on going in between bouts of existential...
Let's go.
I think Tarkov sucks. No, I haven't played it, I just wanted to get that out there, let you all know where I stand on the matter of games I barely know anything about. A friend of mine did put a mod in Project Zomboid that replaced the inventory system with Tarkov's and it was utter garbage, so I know a little bit about it. I know its inventory management is utter garbage, but I play Paradox games, so I'm probably not the authority on if a game is good or not.
Neither one of us are, bud.
I haven't met...
We both play Paradox games, and I don't know why I do it anymore. Because Paradox releases half of a game, and we'll get the other half in DLCs. Don't worry. Guys... Pugs are mad. Pugs are mad. I don't know why they're mad, but they're mad. Hold on a second. Can't get anything done around here.
disgruntled noise.
In case you guys were wondering what the sound was, the sound of barking, like somebody had lost their mind, it was this. This was the sound. And she's making her disgruntled noise right now because she doesn't want to be in here.
She wants to be with Mama. That's why she's looking at Mama.
Listen to this noise. Listen, hold on. This is her disgruntled noise. Listen. Tell the world how you feel.
Yeah, she's happy. So that's her I want Mama noise.
Are you wanting to go now?
Is that why you staring at Mama? Yeah.
Listen to her.
That way you're staring at Mama, you disgruntled.
Oh, good lord. Anyhow, guys, that was Trazyn the Infinite. And mostly pulled from the Infinite and Divine, as well as the 13th Black Crusade, Pug Bungo. But Trazyn is a little thief, just like this little thing. Just like this little thing.
She's a sock thief.
She is a sock thief. But unlike Trazyn, she does not give her socks back during times of need.
Nope.
And she doesn't fight the Tyranids either.
And if you try to get them back from her, she'll play tug-tug with it.
She'll just run off with them. What are you talking about?
If you try to get them out of her mouth, she'll play tug-tug with it.
This is my Puglar, by the way. This is the Black Puglar. And she is still making disgruntled noises. But like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I'm gonna go on from here. All of PancreasNoWorks. Links give me in the description down below. Would you stop making that noise? I'll see you guys next time.